Hey, welcome back. Today I want to talk about a commission that I did recently that is a wedding commission, and it was a lot of fun to work on. And I just want to take you through a little bit of the process of how I made the painting and maybe just give a couple tips for watercolor painting that might help you or that you might just find interesting. So I want to first start off by saying when you're doing a commission for somebody and it is something that somebody wants, pretty much a reproduction, maybe it's in your style or whatever, but it is based on a photograph that they sent you. So with that, you are going to want to draw a grid. That's something that has helped me so much, and it has helped to save so much time for me. When I first started this painting, I was planning on making the grid a little bit later. I was going to draw the basic shapes and where they were, and then I was going to start the grid. But I learned early on how helpful and important it would be for me to create that. And it saved me a heck of a lot of time. So that was the first thing that I did, was I got my watercolor paper and I drew out a grid. How I did that was I took my reference photo and I took it into Photoshop. And if you click on the crop tool, it brings up a grid of 9 squares, and that will be your basis for your grid. So you're gonna want to lay that out on your watercolor paper, and that will help be a reference for when you're drawing everything out. And so after that, I sketched out the drawing as detailed as I could go without pushing too much on the watercolor paper. You don't want to put too much pressure on your pencil because it'll really interfere when you're trying to put the watercolor paint down, and it'll make things a lot darker and muddy than they need to be. So you really just want to get a drawing. You can draw the details, but if you end up putting a lot of pressure on the paper, then just go through with an eraser, which is what I did. I'll show you the eraser that I use. So after you've done your drawing and everything is perfectly where that should be on the grid, if you have any extra really heavy dark drawing on your paper, take this stretchy, I need to get a new one, but because it's really kind of getting old, but take this and just dabble it on the paper, and that will lift up anything that you don't want, and it'll just be like the basic drawing that you can see. You really want to push those dark values with your paint, not with your pencil. I will say the grid might not be necessary for everyone. If you're not doing something that's extremely realistic, you don't have to worry probably as much. So if you're going more stylized, you may not need that. You may be able to do that without that. So I don't want anyone just to hear this and think that this is 100% the only way to do it. Something that I think is really helpful when you're painting skin is just to remember that skin is not just made of like one color. It's no matter who it is, there's many different tones in there, and especially if they have kind of rosy cheeks, like almost everybody has some kind of warm tones in them. So I pull in like a couple different browns, and I pull in some red and some pink that kind of helps the skin to look more lifelike and pop. Oh, here's an important thing that I want to talk about right here, because with watercolor, if you make a mistake, you can fix it. I made a mistake on the ear, and I noticed that it was just slightly too far to the right. I needed to move it over. So what I did was I took the paintbrush, dipped it in the water, and spread that on the area that you want to be erased. So you just take a little bit of that water on a clean paintbrush and kind of push that paintbrush in there with a little bit of friction to kind of lift the paint up a little bit. And then once you get all of that loosened up, then you can take a paper towel and pull that up and lift it up. That's just something that I really wanted to point out, because this is so helpful for watercolor paintings. So originally I made the background exactly as it was in the reference photo. I painted it, those little details in the background in that exact way that you would see in the photo. But then after I was finished, I looked back at it and realized that it would actually be better for the composition and for the putting the emphasis on their faces and bringing the attention up. If I didn't have all those little details in there, that was kind of distracting. And if I had that gradient of darker on the bottom, fading up to lighter on the top, and then those details in that lighter portion that contrast would be created. And so I changed the original background and I made it a little more simple, and I feel like that really helped to pull it all together. And it was my husband's suggestion, so I'm super glad that he gave me that idea and really helped to helped me to push myself and to think outside the box. Something that was fun about this too is once I was done with the full background, I went through and I took white watercolor paint and I like took a bunch of that, put it on the brush, brushed that over top of everything from top to bottom, and it really created this almost like foggy-ish effect, or more of like a faded effect, and I think that was really nice for this painting and something that I wanna try and use more of for like adding maybe a foggy sort of effect. I used to think that white watercolor paint was pointless, but it actually truly can add some cool effects after you're done with your painting and you maybe want to add a little bit more detail. So I would say give it a shot if you've never used the white watercolor paint. Of course, with the lighter parts of the painting, like the veil and like his jacket and her dress and all that, it's nice to just let the paper show through on that part. So because it creates the brightest white that you're ever going to get is going to be just the paper. That's it. So every layer that you add on top of that is going to be a little bit darker. Even if you do decide to pull up the paint from the paper, it's never going to be exactly as white as it was before you started painting. So just keep that in mind, that you just do things in layers and slowly build those layers. You don't want to immediately go in with your darkest color. You want to think about, what is the lightest color that I'm using? And then what's next after that? And then after that, and build up to your darkest ones. Watercolor is pretty forgiving. When it comes down to it, I think that there's a lot of other paints out there that are a lot less forgiving. And so if you mess up, don't like beat yourself up or worry too much, because you can truly change the way it looks if you want to. And that's all part of learning too. Sometimes I do make a mistake, or I do something that I wasn't planning on doing originally, and it turns out to be something that I really enjoyed. Usually that's whenever I'm doing something that is with the background or with a texture, and I put too much water on, or I put too much paint on, and I go, oh, that's too much. And then like sometimes if you just play with it and you just let it go, you can have some pretty cool effects. There's a texture that you can do with like saran wrap, where you take a watercolor wash really wet, and then you take saran wrap and you stick it on top and you crumple it up and you pull that off in a couple hours, and it creates this really neat effect. So just have fun with it. That's my suggestion. Just have as much fun with it as you can. So this has been my process for this particular painting. I hope that it's helped to see somebody else do a painting in their process and from start to finish, and maybe you could take something away, even if it's just to draw a grid.